I'm Caitlin Gomez from the GBTA broadcast studio, live in Toronto with Michael Robertson from Egencia. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
Thanks for joining me. So talk to me about the current state of the business travel market in North America. What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, it's never a dull time in the marketplace. On the supply side, we're seeing quite a few things right now. On the airline side of it, we're starting to see a lot more prevalence of branded fares. For example, Air Canada this year should have about 5 different fare classes around their flex fares. So it's a very interesting time for people to figure out how to try and navigate all of these different fare class types in the same type of seat. So if you have 5 different choices for economy, how are you going to choose the right one that suits your travel needs? There's also right now an interesting consolidation going on. The Alaska consolidation with Virgin America, I think should heat up a very interesting battle on the west coast of the United States, especially in Canada, with that new airline be able to compete more aggressively with Southwest. And the impact to air prices should be very interesting there. That consolidation trend should actually continue into hotels. We've seen some pretty big consolidations recently, and we should see some more in 2018. The other big thing is hotel prices will continue to go up, and I think the top 3 markets where we'll see price increases is Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. So primarily up here in Canada. So an interesting aspect is the hoteliers are trying to shift away from fixed negotiated rates to more a percentage off so that they can keep their revenue going.
Dynamic pricing, right?
Definitely. And then lastly, on the car side of the industry, the ride-hailing impact and its impact on the car industry and same-day rentals on airport is really starting to have an impact. I think they estimate about an 8 to 10% market shift going from the classic car agencies to Uber and Lyft and those things. And so how do companies deal with that emerging ride-hailing part of it? On the travel management side, we're seeing some very interesting tech startups, right? People doing natural language and AI and machine learning. They're all very niche. They kind of have a singular focus, and it'll be very interesting to see how the travel management community responds to incorporate kind of those niche players into a greater platform of experience for companies.
Yeah, definitely a lot of complexities, right? So it makes an agency like yours all that more important, right? To try to navigate through everything, right?
Oh, definitely. There's also a rise, people continue to expect to have self-service. They expect more, they expect it to be easier. They like the one-click shopping that you can do on certain applications already on the internet, and they want the same experience in their corporate behavior and their travel experience, up until the point where it gets complex and they have to navigate complexity, and then they just expect world-class service. And there's this shift back to, okay, we've gone through this self-service cycle, and now we need to get back to this really focus on high-quality offline service when there's complexity. So travel companies are starting to expect the best of both worlds. Efficient, easy to use self-service, as well as extraordinary offline service when things get complex.
That's where I think Egencia really is a star player, right? Especially in the offline and the online experience. So we've seen an increase in focus on traveler satisfaction and the experience in the years. So we kind of talked about this already. Does this come at the expense of cost savings, or do you think you can kind of combine the two?
I would actually turn the question around and ask, what's the cost of traveler dissatisfaction?
Good point.
Right, because I think most people look at what's the lowest possible price you can buy something for, when really you should be thinking about what's the cost of a dissatisfied traveler. Out of policy bookings, no spend control, low duty of care, and quite often when they are dissatisfied, they're also a dissatisfied employee, which can lead to turnover, and we all know the organizational cost of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then it's about, in my opinion, spending smart, not spending cheap.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so making wise decisions on how you spend that money. For example, if a traveler has status and they want to pay $40 more for a ticket on an airline where they have status, where they get lounge access, meals, free beverages, can work, low stress, that makes more economic sense to pay the higher price than just to chase the cheapest possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking at the broader picture, right, rather than the simple trip.
Definitely. And for the travelers that don't have the status, there's a lot of TMCs that are now starting to augment their programs and provide it to their member organizations, things like lounge access, things like when your flight gets canceled to get you economic recoup, and also travel insurance to take out some of the stress of travel. So for those that have status, allow them to spend the money. For those that don't, let your TMC augment that experience to make it better for them.
That's a great value add, considering some of us spent 4 hours in the airport just trying to get to Toronto through the weather the last couple of days.
And quite honestly, the cost of a few cocktails and a lunch at the counter while you're sitting there in the airport trying to work in a cramped little space, versus just paying for a lounge access where you can be much more productive is actually better off for the organization.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what key areas can small to mid-market size companies focus on to improve their travel programs?
Yeah, well, the first thing that I would say is if you don't have a managed structure in place and you're a small and medium business, start now.
Absolutely.
Start while you're small, while you can still affect your culture before your organization grows to the size where a shift like that becomes very, very difficult.
Exactly.
The second thing that I would say there is that right now, I think people focus on control rather than responsibility. And most people in an organization have good intent, right? And if you just talk about what your organizational goals are, if you communicate more to your traveler base around what your goals are, rather than control,
Punitive.
position responsibility, most people get on board quicker and you can drive better compliance. And in 2017, Egencia did a study of small and medium businesses and what are their goals for 2018. And the top 3 things that they came back with was increased cost savings and cost avoidance, improved traveler satisfaction, and then increased spend visibility. The other thing that we learned right in conjunction with that is all the people that have that responsibility wear so many hats they don't have the time to focus on it.
Yeah.
Right. So my advice
That's
to
why
small,
they come to you.
Yes. But my advice to the small and medium businesses as well would be empower somebody in your organization to those ends.
Yeah.
Those 3 goals don't just happen. Somebody has to work those problems. They have to focus on savings, they have to focus on satisfaction, and they have to focus on the user experience. So empower somebody in the organization to actually accomplish those goals for the business.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Michael.
Oh,
It's been
wonderful.
a pleasure. From the GBTA broadcast studio live in Toronto, we'll see you next time.